Choosing a platform as a new home for your website is a decision of significant effect. You want to make sure to do all of your homework right now, as opposed to getting down the road and finding out some surprises later that you really didn't know about, which, causes some significant problems. In this video, we're going to compare the checkout area of BigCommerce against Adobe Commerce. There are many merchants who are on Adobe Commerce and perhaps are interested in BigCommerce. The question, though, is as we boil it down to individual features, which one is better? And unfortunately, the question of which one is better is not necessarily a decision that cut and dry, unlike what you probably read in marketing materials that salespeople hand you almost every day. Nothing against the salespeople, but they want to make a sale. In this case, we're going to talk about which one is best for you. We're going to look at the features of the Adobe Commerce checkout. We're going to look at the features of the BigCommerce checkout, and I will let you make that decision here at the end of the day. This is, after all, the process that we take here at SwiftOtter is we help gather the facts, and then we let the merchant, of course, make the decision. After all, you're the one that gets to live with it at the end of the day. We want you to be happy. So in this conversation today, I would like to introduce you to the battle of the checkouts. This battle is very serious, and it has some very costly ramifications, because the checkout is that choke point that every customer, or almost every customer, has to go through in order to put a order into your system, in order to give you money. And in my experience, I find that regularly the checkout is neglected. It's underutilized by the administration, by the decision makers at a company, and thus it's there, but it's not given the proper attention that it needs to give. And so today we're going to compare out-of-the-box Adobe Commerce with out-of-the-box BigCommerce. Now, I want to make the caveat here that everything on Adobe Commerce is possible. It's open source, it's customizable. But unfortunately, with this customization comes a higher total cost of ownership. Out of the box, Adobe Commerce is, in my experience and my opinion, rock solid, stable, performant, etc. It's just as these customizations start getting stacked one on top of each other to match the business requirements that your business needs, is when the checkout performance starts tanking, or the website performance starts having problems, or bugs are introduced, or customers then, of course, just can't place their order. It's as these layers get added on top. And so the more we can leverage native functionality, the better we are off. Now, of course, I also want to call out on the BigCommerce side, their checkout is basically fully extendable as well. Because it is software as a service and because payments are involved, there are some areas that are maybe slightly less customizable. For example, adding the capability to add extra fields in concrete terms. When you add an extra field using the B2B edition, or the B2B edition is the best example, those fields are actually tagged one on the other in the order comments field. So of course you would have to parse that out if you wanted to do any type of filtering or searching based off of that. So at the end of the day, that could be considered a slight limitation. But we're going to look at Adobe Commerce versus BigCommerce, and I'm going to fill you in on all the details with this. Let's start out by taking a look at the Adobe Commerce checkout. I am already logged in here, as you will see. It's pretty simple to see what this involves. We have a shipping, we have a pickup in store. Again, we have our shipping addresses here. We can expand our order summary. For some reason, that's not expanded by default out of the box. But and there also, for some reason, is not a opportunity to put a checkout totals right here. Either way, we can add a new address, pops up a form to do that. Again, pretty simple. We have our shipping methods right here as well. I'm going to now, with this very quick review of what is available on this page, we're going to jump over onto the BigCommerce side again to see what is there. This is kind of like an A/B comparison as quickly as possible to see the difference here. So on the BigCommerce side, you're going to notice a fairly different experience. In my opinion, it is significantly more polished looking. Again, out of the box. The good news is, from a look and feel perspective, literally everything is customizable on BigCommerce, just like it is customizable in Adobe Commerce. They're pretty much all entirely customizable as far as the look and feel goes. So We're already logged in here as a customer, just like we were already logged in as a customer on this side. And this introduces a little bit of nuance, but a couple things I want to call out. First, we see this ship to multiple addresses. This is a very powerful and easy tool to be able to allow a customer to say, hey, and especially useful in a gifting side or B2B, hey, I want to ship these products to this place, this products to this other place, which saves the user time. And especially in a B2B environment, and to an extent gifting, this does make a difference. Now, on the Adobe Commerce side, if you wish to check out using multiple addresses, I'm going to pull this up right here. We can click on a link on the cart page to check out with multiple addresses. Now here you see it's an entirely separate workflow that you have to go through. So we can select what we want here. We can say go to shipping information. And then we can select UPS ground, whatever our shipping option is, and then continue to billing information. Now it's a completely separate workflow than it is on BigCommerce. But as we see here on the BigCommerce side, this is literally we can click is edit here. We can select an address. We can enter new address. We can continue. We can select whatever products we want to ship to a given destination. Let's drop this down to 0. We'll continue. We'll actually put this down to 1, and we'll select a different address here, and we can go from there. So all this to say, this is a really powerful way to be able to select what item goes where. Here we see we have the different addresses and different shipping options for each one. Right in line, as you can kind of tell, I'm a fan of this. I like this. This is smooth. Again, it looks classy out of the box. It's really, really nice. So this is the page 1. And of course it gets a little bit long, but that's not a huge deal. We'll just select a shipping option for each one of these. And now we have our total shipping. That includes obviously the shipping to both destinations. We have our delivery time, potentially delivers in 6 days, whatever. That is all set right there, ready to go out of the box. This is super nice. The other thing, and this is just a totally minor thing, but in Adobe Commerce, there is no actual way to do order comments out of the box. You have to install a free module, not a big deal, but it's just not there out of the box. So, that's something that is pretty nice with BigCommerce. Plus, the other thing to note is with the B2B edition, you can create any field that you want here in the checkout. Again, with Adobe Commerce, adding extra fields then can be a pretty involved process. Again, touching anything in the checkout on Adobe Commerce terrifies most developers. That's just not the case on BigCommerce. The checkout is pretty easy to customize. I mean, it's not like anybody can do it, but it's overall a fairly straightforward process. So here we can see the differences. Adobe Commerce to BigCommerce, BigCommerce seems more polished, multi-address capability built right in. Let's look at a couple more differences. One other thing here, we're going to just remove this, clean this up a little bit so we can easily see what's going on here. We're going to edit this here. Okay. Oh, there we go. It was down here. Okay. Oh, that's right, because we're selecting it to a different address. Okay. So one thing to note here, and actually I'd be curious, we could just try selecting the same address for both. Continue. Here we go. Okay. So what happens here actually then is we are able to add in a new address. And while at the surface you might say, Joseph, what's so special about adding a new address? Out of the box, natively speaking, it's really nice capability here. So we have our first name, last name. But actually I've realized, let's just create nope, this is already a new address ready to go here. So we can label it, spearmint, whatever, our address label. We have our address, etc. But we can label our address if we'd like. So we can put in, something that we want to save for later. As we're typing here, let's just type in 123. You'll notice that the autofill automatically is here. We can save this in our address book. Again, that's very similar to Magento, etc. So overall, I would say this is a more polished process for a checkout experience. Just the little things really add up to make this very user-friendly. So we're going to ship to a single address again. I selected one address. Billing address is the same as shipping address. It's all right here. let's take a moment now and move into the second aspect of this, which would be the payment part of checking out. So here I have already clicked over from shipping into review payments. We can select a payment method that has been saved here. BigCommerce also has the capability to save payment methods on I'm going to say the vast majority of the different types of, I think there's roughly 48 different payment providers that they work with. So at the end of the day, we have our shipping, our billing, we can edit those. They're collapsed up nice and tight. And now we can move down to payment. So we can just enter in our card number here. That's correct. Okay. Of course, we can save this card for future transactions. Put a reference number. We have our terms and conditions. Again, this is very similar to Magento, but we have our we have our delivery window. And this is a B2B edition feature, but it's pretty powerful just being able to create a field anywhere we want. Well, not anywhere. Like there's a couple of different places, but we can create these fields in the checkout process. Very easy. Just click of a button and it's ready to go. So back here on the Adobe side, we can click place orders. We go through conditions. And again, from a functional perspective, this is all very similar. I would say from an aesthetics perspective, BigCommerce definitely wins out. We have it all on one screen here. It's just easy to see. But the other thing to note is that this can all be easily, I'm going to say not easily, fairly easily tweaked on both the Adobe Commerce and the BigCommerce when it comes to style. So for example, here's something that I would like to see happen is that this box here on the right side is sticky. In other words, it sticks to the top of the screen as I scroll down. It stays here in this area as I scroll down until I guess I could get to the bottom. That's just a nice little user tweak, but honestly, it's not a hard thing to implement. The same would be also fairly true for on the Adobe side, except they take a different approach because we have our ship to and shipping method. That takes a vertical height, and from a user experience perspective, depending on the type of screen that is being used, if it's a short screen, it might cut off some of this information at the bottom, which is a problem. And again, having all this on one window that's nicely collapsed up, I think is just pretty nice overall. As far as security goes, both have reCAPTCHA, so that's about the same, both except coupons and gift certificates. We're going to talk more about the rules engine for promotions, but I'm just going to throw this out there that BigCommerce actually does have a significantly better promotion engine than Adobe Commerce. So that's something to also keep in mind. So for all the great features that Adobe has, and don't get me wrong, it has some really fantastic features. Even when we get into the B2B edition, we're going to do a video about that as well. The thing to remember is the checkout for some reason has just not ever gotten much love. And I think on the Adobe Commerce side, the reason why it has not gotten much love is because it's so complex. Developers really don't like working with it. And that makes it a difficult thing. On the BigCommerce side, the way they've engineered it, it's much more intuitive, and it's definitely within reach to customize it by quite a fair share of developers, which ultimately makes a better checkout experience overall. So this is part one, looking at what these pages look like, right? How can we interact with them, and what does the native default experience look like? Now, beyond that, though, I think we need to take a look and see what does it look like for administration of these pages. What features, what options do we have to control over how this behaves with and interacts with the user? Well, let's take a moment and review this. So back on the Adobe Commerce side, we are here in the admin panel, and we have several options. And again, these options control how this area behaves. And very important, because we can't just say take the default configuration. We have to understand what configuration is also available to help us fully make our decision, because default might not work on either Adobe Commerce or BigCommerce. We need to understand what goes into being behind this, or what powers this. So let's look at a few options here. Number one, enable guest checkout login on Adobe Commerce here. Now, this is a option that is widely used in the B2B environment. Now, the only problem with this is requiring customers to register means that on the cart page, when they click proceed to checkout, they are greeted with what I call a registration wall. I'm sure you're familiar with browsing a news website and you're unable to read the full article because they want your money or your email address. Well, it's the very same thing here. Customer has the intent of making the purchase. They're clicking the checkout button, and all of a sudden they're greeted with a what seems to be a fairly rude message. I mean, it's not verbally rude, but it's rude to the intent or the process of what they want, and that requires them to register. BigCommerce, on the other hand, has a very interesting capability for this. So we can allow them, customers are not required to have an account to check out. That would be default, just like Adobe Commerce. But they might be able to proceed to check out without having an account, but it's going to create them an account at the end of this process. And the reason I like this option is you still capture their intent, thus capturing their money, making a sale, but you haven't thrown this wall up in front of them. So they are officially a registered user. They're going to have to create a password, etc. But it's kind of like this really nice middle ground. Of course, the other option here is that if they must have or create an account to check out, that would be synonymous with changing this to be yes. So we have the capabilities to force, of course, registration before checking out. Although BigCommerce still does it a little bit differently, and I think it's in a better user experience. Okay, so enable one-page checkout. This is a funny option because literally it's do you allow checkout or not. Allow guest checkout. This is actually, and I got things a little bit swapped out. Guest checkout, by enabling this is where, by setting this to be no, is where that wall appears. And yeah, so guest checkout login is a little bit different. I got ahead of myself on this one. Okay, so display billing address on. This is basically where in the checkout do you want to allow this to be changed. So normally, and it doesn't make a huge amount of sense to me. Normally it is here in the under the payment method, but you can control where this is shown, like the payment inside the payment method or on the payment page. The payment method is probably the better of the two, but I think there's room for optimization here. Enable terms and conditions. Again, very similar to BigCommerce, you can upload your terms and conditions. Maximum number of items to display in the order summary. That's fairly easy. And then you can also do the address search here as well. So it allows you to be able to search through the existing address book. That's pretty much it. Obviously, you can set up delivery methods and payment methods, that sort of thing, configuring tax. But ultimately, that pretty much governs checkout. You'll find a couple other options here in the sales menu, but those are mostly around configuring minimum order amount, etc. Let's jump over on the BigCommerce side. Now, you will notice maybe about the same number of options. Here we have, again, the capability to determine how customers are able to, whether or not they're able to have whether they're required to have an account when checking out. Again, a little bit more fine-grained control around this. Do you share cart items across multiple devices? I would leave this to be yes all the time. We have reCAPTCHA enabled as well. The B2B, as well as other options, allows you to insert a custom checkout, and this is in some cases what would be required to making some more technical changes to there. Then we can scroll down. We have passwordless logins. I really like this feature. It basically sends the customer an email it gives them a code so then they can log in that way as opposed to trying to remember a password. Passwords in themselves, as ubiquitous as they are, they aren't always perfect. We can have a privacy policy being selected here. Shipping options as well. Turns on or off multiple shipping options here. The multi-address shipping. And then we can have my billing address is the same as shipping address. I'm sure there's a few merchants out there that would want that disabled. And again, just continues through this. We have our terms and conditions. One thing to note is that currently on BigCommerce, and this is going to be changing here in the near future, is that there is, you can't really translate this. So in Adobe Commerce, you can go create translations for different locales, but in BigCommerce, you really can't do that. So that's one thing just to note here. A little bit more styling. You can change some of the look and feel of that right here. etc. One thing also wanted to call out, if you saw back here on this checkout, we see Bolt. BigCommerce and Adobe Commerce both support Bolt. So if you're already using Bolt or considering using Bolt, check out, again, kind of like the Shopify Shop Pay competition there of trying to create a more centralized type of checkout experience. Then that works on both of these platforms. And that kind of knocks out a piece of the platform that you really don't even have to touch at that point. Bolt's a pretty good option. So you can easily snap that into, bolt it into Adobe Commerce or BigCommerce as well. That is up to you, your choice. So with that, I have a short set of features here that I'm going to pull up that I think well illustrates the differences between these two. So customers can be forced to register inside the checkout process instead of only before entering checkout. We have the native autocomplete for shipping addresses, multi-address support, etc. Flip of the switch for the digital wallet support. Again, you're going to find that out of the box, BigCommerce has more features on the checkout side, and it's richer, it's better implemented. And I'm going to make a fairly bold claim that I am guessing this will increase your conversion rate. My estimate would be about 5%, given everything that I'm seeing here. It honestly could be more because of how these features are implemented and how streamlined they are. So I think there's a big win on the BigCommerce side. Now, on the Adobe side, though, the big benefit that I see there is that everything is possible. No matter what you want to do, everything is possible. You could scrap the whole checkout. You can use pieces of it. You can implement a completely custom process through the checkout. It doesn't matter. Everything is possible. And so depending on your needs, if you are requiring something that is highly customized, is just not a standard workflow at all, then I would probably push you toward Adobe Commerce at that point. Otherwise, in my opinion, BigCommerce is an excellent fit. Again, their checkout is well optimized, and they've even been putting out some information recently just about how well optimized their checkout is, and they're pretty proud of it. And I think it's for good reason. Their checkout is an excellent experience. And so, yeah, I hope this has been helpful in understanding the differences between these two platforms and specifically in the checkout area.